So, welcome everybody. This is the second podcast. Our first podcast was sometime in 2024, I think, the fall or whatever. So, allow me to introduce myself, Maceo Wright. I'm one of the co-founders of Clean Plate Labs, and we have a little bit of a twist here where we are shifting our focus to more of a mingle with Clean Plate Labs because we've realized the audience has taken appreciation to us bringing in different voices within the community. And it just so happens today I'm sitting next to my childhood friend, my best friend from elementary, middle school, and Regi Young. Regi Young is the executive director of Alameda County Community Food Bank. I'm going to let Regi describe more about his background and his role. But before I do that, this is an honor because we have not only grew up together, but we have managed to stay in touch. And before we started recording tonight, we were talking about being intentional and having a dedication to creating experiences. And I think one of the things that instead of a resolution per se, it's more of a wish. I wish good health for not just myself, but my family and my friends. But I also wish that we stay connected. And one of the ways we stay connected is very interesting because it has to do with Regi's line of work and the organization that he leads. Also, the organization that I have co-founded with my business partner, Group Saha. So allow me to introduce Regi Young again. Regi can speak to his role, his responsibility, and what he's up to. And then we're just going to have a candid conversation, catch up, and we appreciate you watching. And as always, there'll be his contact information at the end of the podcast. You can reach out to Regi directly through his team and or follow his organization online, social media links, etc. And just please stay connected to what we're trying to do in 2025. So happy New Year, and we wish everyone good health and good spirits. And allow me to introduce Regi Young. So Regi, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. And it was a pleasure getting to chat with you before we actually started the film because we got to catch up on a lot of different things. And, anytime that we're together, it's just really just being around family. And so I always appreciate being in community with you and just thank you for the opportunity even to chat amongst friends.
Yes.
In the new year. So happy New Year to everyone. Again, I'm Regi Young. I'm the executive director of the Alameda County Community Food Bank. I have been at that organization for 3 years, and prior to that, I was the chief strategy officer at the Houston Food Bank, where I worked for 11 years, and in our hometown of Houston. And it's been a fun and challenging journey, but a journey that's very worthwhile. I am a very big proponent of the fact that food insecurity is something that should not exist in the richest country and one of the richest regions in the richest country, the Bay Area. And so my team essentially works to not only try to meet the needs of community members by providing food resources to people in need today, but we also try to think about what are the things that allow for food insecurity to actually exist within our community. So how do we address the conditions that lead to food insecurity? And there are a lot of conditions that do so. And so when we talk about food insecurity, we not only talk about it from the standpoint that people actually need food, but we also try to recognize that there are a lot of underlying causes, root causes, that have created the rationale for food insecurity and need for people like myself and my team members. Because the reality is that wouldn't it be great if food banks were no longer needed in our country? And that's the type of work that we're trying to do within Alameda County. The thing that I think a lot about right now when I think about this work is how do we take a different frame for how we approach this work? And the frame that I'm speaking of is a justice frame because for me, the opposite of poverty and there's some really good speakers that talk about this. It's not necessarily wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice, and so without that, there is actually without justice, there's no possibility for people to actually be able to live and to be their best selves. And so I want everybody to thrive in Alameda County. I want everybody to thrive in the Bay Area. I want everybody to thrive in the country. And so for us, it's a personal mission, but something that my colleagues at Alameda County Community Food Bank also share. And it's always a great opportunity to be in a community with so many people who are passionate about this work and really understand that there is a solution. We need to find ways to get there.
I appreciate that background. In terms of the justice aspect, can you touch on what that means from a local level? Because you've been involved with the Alameda County Community Food Bank for 3 years. How is that landscape in the Oakland area different from Houston as it pertains to the word justice?
Yeah, so I would say that, different cities have different funds of knowledge, different histories. And what's unique about Oakland specifically is that when people think about Oakland, they think of it as a place that kind of has a heartbeat for social justice. I mean, Alameda County is the place where you have, thinking about the 70s, you had a lot of the protests that came out of University of California, Berkeley. 60s and 70s, you have the Black Panther movement born in West Oakland. This is a community where social justice is kind of synonymous with the history of that community. And so when I think about food insecurity and what does it mean to think about a justice frame, a lot of times I'm thinking about what has already happened in Alameda County and how do you leverage those assets that are built in the fabric of that community, who's always taken real strong stances on political issues, on social issues in that community, and really think about how you leverage that in the work that we're doing on an ongoing basis. One of the cool things about being in a community like Oakland is that even when you're working with community members who are struggling with food insecurity at that moment, when you talk about the challenges, the community members, people who are in the distribution line can say, Regi, how can I help? Right? And I think that's a unique thing that might be there in the Bay Area that I didn't experience in other spaces, is that people in that community will stand alongside you to really try to address whatever that issue is, whether it's a housing issue, whether it's food insecurity, whatever it is. People in the Bay Area really understand it and will work alongside you in order to rectify it. And so in a lot of ways, when I think about what the approach is, I don't try to approach it from the standpoint of I have to be this genius that has to figure out this solution. No, I have to leverage the genius that is our community to really try to rectify this issue and think about how do we leverage our resources, how do we leverage our brand in support of the goals of our community. And so I think that's a really unique thing that every community has if they're able to tap into what's unique about that particular place. And there's definitely some unique things about Alameda County, Oakland, Berkeley, and all the different cities that are in that area.
So when you mentioned leveraging the people and really extrapolating like that human element, which is the talent itself. Thinking back to when you said your role in Houston Food Bank was the chief
strategy
officer.
Amongst a bunch of other roles I had there.
Sure. You wore a lot of different hats. And now, recently, you were recognized amongst the 75 food banks around the country, I want to say, and give or take, you would know best. You were recognized as one of the top leaders within that space recently. Tell us about that award, that recognition. How did that originate? What was the genesis behind that? You shared it with me. I obviously shared it within my circle because I was proud of you. but I want our community to hear the genesis behind that recognition. How did that come about, and how is that created a higher stage for you to really have an impact?
Yeah, so the recognition was Food Bank CEO of the Year through Food Bank News, and definitely check out Food Bank News. It's a really good platform to talk about all the different things that are happening in the food insecurity space, as well as what different food banks and food pantries are doing around the country. And so the way that I got into it is that I was one of about 130 folks nominated for this recognition, and a group of peers actually selected, along with the editors of Food Bank News, selected the winner. And so I was fortunate enough to be selected. And the thing that I think about, because it's great to be selected for this recognition, but the way that I think about it is, how do you leverage any opportunity to talk about the work and how we can progress the work? And so for me, what's cool about it is that it gave me a platform to do an article in Food Bank News and talk about what we're doing. And the reason why it was important for me is because I wanted to signal to other food banks that there's more that we can do as organizations who, in a lot of cases, are the most well-known nonprofits in our regions, wherever we are within the country. We're typically are very trusted amongst our community members. And, we both played sports, and I think a lot in sports analogy,
Sure.
right? And so for me, when I think about what we mean to our individual communities, as of having a lot of trust, as being organizations who are connected to so many different people, the people who donate to us, the people that volunteer at our organizations, the people that we partner with in community, the people who receive resources from us. We have so many relationships within community. And so when I think about it, it's like all of those relationships that we build, which I think is like our biggest asset. A lot of times people think about our food as the biggest asset that food banks has, and I think it's the relationships that we have. When you have all of these resources, when you have all of these relationships, when you have all of the support, and when you have these strong brands, for me, it creates an opportunity to do more. And the analogy I like to use is like, what if you're like the most skilled basketball player on a court, and instead of trying to win the game, you just dribble. You're going behind. You're Allen Iverson with it, right? You're moving all around. But you never go to actually win a game. You don't take a shot. That's the way I think about what it means to have all of these relationships, have all of the support in our respective communities, and we only distribute food. When I know that distributing food does not solve food insecurity. You can distribute, when I was in Houston, the Houston Food Bank distributed 200 million pounds of food.
Wow.
That's a lot of food.
200 million pounds?
That was in 1 year.
Wow.
Right. And they're probably doing more now. And so the thing is that food insecurity still existed in Houston. So there's no scenario in which you're going to program your way or food distribute your way out of food insecurity, because there's so many other conditions that lead to food insecurity, right? Housing issues, healthcare issues, right? Think about people, people always talk about when they come to a food pantry, you're like, what brought you here? A lot of times they don't even say food. They say things like childcare. I was like, I have to pay for childcare, and the only place I have flexibility with my costs is in the food, right? So if I'm able to get food here, then that saves me $200 where I can put into my rent or into my childcare or into my medical bills, whatever the case may be, right? And so if those other issues are not dealt with, it's unlikely to where people will get to the place where they no longer need a food bank, right? And so when I think about being that skilled basketball player with all of these assets at our disposal, if you're not pushing for policy changes, if you're not pushing for systemic changes that create the conditions for people to really thrive in communities, then we'll always be stuck in this cycle in which we're just distributing food, which is great, but you're not really seeing food insecurity decline in communities. And so for me, when I think about what does it mean to go beyond that, it is really taking that justice frame and thinking about how do you leverage your community along with all of the brand recognition and the assets that you've built up as an organization to really push for long-term strategies that end hunger in our communities. And so for me, that is like shooting the shot, winning the championship, and really putting an end to this issue that I believe can be resolved in our community.
I love the sports analogy. So just, we always like to talk about our history and, the fun times that we had playing sports. So Reggie was the most athletic, and, he's not going to deny it. He was, growing up, he was probably arguably one of the fastest guys in our circle, and you were always the most athletic. And then it just got to the point where we were catching up. Like when I say we, I'm saying myself. I would also throw in a guy that we still know, Victor, because we both know Victor had a late growth spurt.
Oh yeah.
I remember Victor was one of the smallest.
Oh yeah.
And then he just sprouted up.
Taller than both of us, and faster and everything else. Yeah.
So we obviously had our shine, but the interesting analogy that you frame here is the sports analogy. And having said that, I think that's an interesting way to look at your follow-up statement. And you said this a few times, this works. And I want to expand upon that because last time we talked, and this time today being January the 16th, 2025, how has the work that you are doing changed with the influence of technology, specifically AI, but also coupled with global occurrences currently? And I know you're 6.5 hours or so away from the LA fires, but how has global catastrophes impacted the work, technology impacted the work in your organization? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, so I would say, and I take a lot of lessons as it relates to disaster response from my time in Houston, right? Because we always were a summer away from another hurricane, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that I'll say is that primarily in every disaster scenario that I dealt with, whether it was response to Hurricane Harvey or the floods or the freeze, pandemic, there was always a scenario in which people who were disproportionately struggling with poverty were always seem to be impacted a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And I would suspect that's probably the same case in LA right now. And so one of the great things about being in a network of food banks is that when you are the organization that's experiencing that disaster, you get a lot of support from the other food banks around the country. And LA is going through its thing, but the reality is that they're never going to be alone because there's other food banks lined up ready to support. And the challenge is like being able to take the time to think and strategize with all of the calls that you're getting, with all of the need that's rising, and really be strategic about how you leverage that support. And so we've offered our support to LA. A lot of other food banks around the country have as well. Feeding America is coordinating that response. and we definitely have them in our hearts and our minds, and really thinking about them, and are definitely willing and able to support them in any way that we can. Because we also know that in our area, we are prone for that type of challenge as well. And there's going to be a time in which we'll probably need their support in that regards. And so definitely as a food bank network member, we always are going to be thinking about how we can support one another, because none of this work you can do by yourself, right? As it relates to technology, one of the things that we're thinking about within our organization is a full digital transformation. Some of our systems are antiquated, and when you think about the possibilities with AI, what you're talking about is like, how can you be more efficient with your time utilization? How can you be more strategic in the way that you're doing things? And for me, it just opens up a lot of great possibilities. And so we are actually in the process. We just created a new strategic plan with a theme of moving from charity to justice. And so within the scope of this plan, we're going to be doing a lot of new things and thinking about how we as an organization, similarly to what I was describing before, can leverage our resources and support of our community in its self-seeking for justice, both from the food landscape but justice overall within our region. And as a component of that, data is going to be one of those things that's going to help really drive us to really understanding what the needs are and how we can move and be nimble in supporting our community on an ongoing basis. And so I think about that. I think about it in two ways. I think about it, one, from what are the stories and the anecdotal learnings that we can get from our community members. And so spending time in community, talking to people on the front lines and that are both experiencing food insecurity and responding to food insecurity, or have lived experience in food insecurity, or ways in which we can adapt our approach and really think about how we can be better stewards of our resources in support of the goals of our community. But beyond that, right, we have to be able to have really accurate data from a digital side, and really the system to be able to support that. And so what are the ways in which we're collecting data? What are the ways that we're analyzing data? How are we storing data? How are we protecting data within our organization? That's going to be, and it has been, but it's going to be even a bigger focus for us as an organization as we go into this next strategic plan, which we will begin in July of this year. And so it's a really exciting time for us as we go through that transition, not only because it's going to set us up to be able to really think about how we address the root causes of food insecurity, but also this is our 40-year anniversary as an organization. So we started by a group of pantries within our community who said we needed a central hub to store food in our community. And so we started in 1985, and we've grown massively since that time. And so this is the opportunity for us to really reflect on the first 40 years of our history, but also now setting a stake and saying, for the next 40 years, we are not only going to try to mitigate the need, we're also going to try to end the need. And we're going to take that justice frame forward with us and try to bring our donors, our volunteers, our partners along with us on that journey, step by step, and recognizing that together we can have a really big impact in this community.
Yeah, I love it. I love the message. The message is not just about your organization, but your partners, your donors, the community. And then it kind of leads me to my next question. I mean, all this, to use your word, the work that is involved. What outlet? This is more of a personal question. Like, how do you keep your mind fresh? How do you keep yourself sharp? How do you keep yourself, locked in, per se, using another sports analogy, when you know that your staff right now is 100 plus? Is that?
Yeah, we're about 150.
We're 150, and offline when we were just catching up, And I'll give you a minute to light up your cigar if you want. You mentioned you had a elder statesman that you are going to be partaking in a birthday celebration, and with you being in Phoenix, that'll be one of my questions. You're going to dial in and help celebrate this individual's birthday. So talk about that because that's special. I mean, this individual, and again, you don't need to divulge this individual's name if you don't want to, but from what you've told me, this individual was employee number one or one of the first one. So how does that make you appreciate it more as the leader of your organization? Share a few words about that.
Yeah, so I'll just say that. So we have an employee who they are actually this past week, they've met their 30-year anniversary within the organization. So they came in year 10 of the organization and been with us ever since. And they are now our VP of operations at the food bank. They're amazing. And so, it makes me proud in the sense that, in this work, right, you get to meet some really cool people, right? In different places you don't even expect, right? And this gentleman, his name is Eric.
Shout out to Eric.
Yes, Eric is. He's just like one of the coolest people you can meet, right? This dude talks smooth. He is smooth, really knowledgeable, but super committed to this work, both from the standpoint of like really trying to get better at the work on an ongoing basis and really trying to stay tuned to how we as an organization can adapt to the environment, no matter what changes in the environment. As you mentioned, there could be when COVID happens, right? You have to change your entire operation, and he's responsible for the operations of our office, and he's been adapting to that on an ongoing basis and doing so in a really unique way. And so for people like him, it's a pleasure to work with because it motivates you to see these other motivated people in the same space who have a common goal as you, right? And I get to see that in a lot of ways. I get to see that with working with our partners. Some of our partners have been there from day one, right? And been extremely committed to the community, been doing food distribution before the food bank even existed, right? And so you get to get a lot of really deep knowledge from some of these folks. And the thing that keeps me motivated, and there's a lot of ways, because the reality is this work is extremely challenging, right? And there's two ways that I try to stay super grounded and keeping ideas fresh. One is trying to stay in tune with everything that's going on. And so reading articles that are coming out, reading different books, talking to different colleagues, both from in the food banking space, but outside of it too, right? I think a lot of my inspiration comes from different sectors and how they're approaching challenges and different questions. I might take something from public health and how are they approaching a challenge? How would a tech company approach that same challenge? How would a fire department or another public institution attack a challenge, right? And so I think about that a lot in regards to how do you not get stuck in one way of framing a challenge and really taking these alternate perspectives and other viewpoints that may come from other sectors and supporting my thinking on what we're challenged to do within our landscape. The other way that I do it is almost the complete opposite way, right? Which is going in nature, taking a walk, taking time to myself, and more self-reflection and just thinking, right? And so from that process, I'm able to oftentimes get a lot of clarity in thinking about things that may be disparate ideas, something that may have happened years ago or something that just came up recently, and pinning them together to really make something make sense that may not have made sense to me
Before
a week, a month, a
Yeah.
year before, right? And so
Yeah.
I find that taking that time to yourself, and particularly when walking, or I really like being around water. So if I'm at Lake Merritt or around the bay, those times give me a lot of time for reflection, which oftentimes will provide clarity within this work. And so it also provides kind of rejuvenation for me within this work. And so those two approaches oftentimes help me come back to the organization after a weekend or after spring break and spending time with family, feeling very rejuvenated with newer ideas or even reshaping ideas that may have come before.
I love that. I love that. I'm going to share something a little bit more personal. Last time we connected in your city, Oakland, you were sharing with me, your wife as well, had invited me into your home. We had a great feast. I think we did a DoorDash or what have you. But
Yeah.
you were telling me about this upcoming outdoor trip. If you recall,
Oh, yeah.
you were gonna partake in, and I feel like if my memory serves me well, it was like your first time to experience this event, and it had to do with outdoors. So,
Yeah.
what can you share about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I joined the American Leadership Forum, which is essentially a leadership training and group that's that's nationwide. And I joined the Silicon Valley chapter. And as a part of that journey, you have to do a nature excursion, as my group likes to call it. And I've gone camping before and so forth. But one of the things that we did in this camping excursion, so we went out to the Sierra Mountains, and we were out there for about a week. And at one part of the trip, you had the opportunity to do a solo, which is something I had never done. And so the solo is when you take this like small tent, it doesn't even cover your full body. You find a spot out in the woods or alongside the mountain, and you're by yourself, and you sleep there for overnight. And during this time, you're supposed to do self-reflection, connect with nature, and really think or don't think about your life or whatever. You just have a time to be still for a moment. And so I remember actually going into that experience with a little bit of anxiety about, like, is
Absolutely.
there going to be a bear that pops off over here? A mountain lion's going to come get me? And I found a spot that was on like basically a cliff where if I rolled over, I could fall off the mountain. But it was a really cool spot. And what was amazing is that once I got into it and like really got focused, it was so quiet. I saw so many stars. And after a while, in fact, I saw more shooting stars than I've ever seen in my life. Right? I think I saw like 6 during that night. And it was so extremely peaceful. And I found myself basically staying up all night, just thinking, living, thinking about the past, thinking about the future. And it was so rejuvenating to the point in which when it was morning time and the group was ready to go on and do the journey, we were going to do a hike. I was kind of still chilling. I was still there, thinking and reflecting and so forth. In fact, they had to find me. They didn't know where I was at. They had to call me and so forth. And eventually, I met back up with the crew. But that experience taught me a few things, right? I think, but the main thing that I would say that came out of the experience was really just taking the time to not only get away, but get away from technology.
Unplug.
Yes. But also just get away with your own thoughts, right? And there's very few times in my work or even in daily activities in which you really have the time to be by yourself in your own thoughts without distractions. And that moment really made me desire more of those types of times, to where I can actually see one of my cousins on the screen right here.
There
It's
you
really
go.
cool. But
O'Shea Jackson Jr.
yeah, yeah. And so yeah, having that time to myself, uh, is something I recognized that I needed, but I didn't know that I needed before that moment.
Yeah, and it was all because you perhaps stepped into and stepped out of your comfort zone,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
what
because
do
it
you,
was optional.
right,
Right.
right.
But taking that step was very rewarding.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I want to thank Pearl Cigars in Chandler, Arizona, for allowing us to sit here and catch up as old friends, but also as professionals in this space, for allowing us this platform.
This is a great spot. If y'all are in the Phoenix area, y'all have to come check the spot out. This is a cool springs, very knowledgeable staff here, and they're great.
Yeah, yeah.
Shout out to everybody here.
So why are you in Phoenix? What can you share about your trip here? Because this is now twice in the last 2 years you've been here.
Yeah.
So what can you share about your purpose of visiting Phoenix outside of having this time with me tonight?
Yeah, so one of the things that I learned when I got into this role as the executive director of the food bank is that when you're in these types of roles, you absolutely need to be around peers, to share ideas, to reflect on what's happening in the industry, but then also to just have like as a support group, right? And so I'm in a group of about 11 other EDs and CEOs in the food bank network who meet 3 times a year in different cities around the country, to talk about food banking, to talk about life, and to talk about leadership. And so we are here in Phoenix to have a series of meetings that begin tomorrow, to do just that. And I found these meetings to be really incredible to my journey as a leader. Some of the people that are in this group are people that I look up to within this space and learn a lot from, both from my time when I was in Houston, but definitely now that I'm here, that I'm in Oakland now, and it's going to be just a long, quick, very fast round of conversation about everything food banking, and it's going to be incredible.
Sounds amazing. Anytime you can get around like-minded individuals that hold a great deal of responsibility and also power, I'm certain that you'll figure out, to your point, one of the mantras in your organization moving forward is justice and understanding how you can really unpack that. Looking back in your journey, as you just stated, let's go back to your 25-year-old self. 25-year-old self. So you graduated high school, you're probably finished with your undergraduate degrees. You're transitioning out of playing football. We both played collegiate football. And what would you tell your 25-year-old self if you can go back to that point in your life? Like what would you say, knowing what you know now, to your 25-year-old self?
Keep putting one foot in front of the other. Just keep going. And I feel like it's a simple thing, but I think the biggest lesson I've learned over the years about how to get to where your purpose lies is just plain grit, right? And when I was 25, I was in grad school, and grad school seemed like a mountain to me. It would seem like it was impossible to actually complete. My parents had never gone to that level of education, and so it was all new. I was trying to figure it out on my own and so forth. And then even after grad school, my thought was like, what am I going to do with my life, right? And so you always have these inclinations of like what you care about. And what I've learned and what I would tell myself is just keep going.
Keep
You
going.
know, you try stuff out. You're going to fail more often than you win, but fail forward and keep failing until you do get that win. And so uh, when I talk to a lot of people that I've worked with in the past and we catch up, you know, a lot of times the framing of the conversation is around success. And, you've successfully done this or they successfully done that. But none of that success was created because we were just really good at what we did. We had to learn how to do it. I had to learn how to speak the ideas that I had in my head in meetings or in conferences and so forth. I had to learn how to organize in communities and build trust around ideas so that we can get them pushed forward. And all of it was trial and error. And the only thing that kept you in the game was thinking like, well, maybe I can get better tomorrow. Because a lot of it was failure, right? And so failing is just a part of it. And nobody who's successful did it without failing way more than the successes.
I feel like that's a critical point. You use grit, keep moving, one foot forward, and just being able to have gumption, right?
Yeah.
Being able to really adapt. You know, you talk about your parents, and you know, I'm familiar. You know, your mom, and I've said this on the first podcast. Your mom was very influential, instrumental. She was like a mother to many of us. And I mean, personally speaking, like she was always looking after me in middle school, elementary school, and you know, from picking me up to making me feel a part of what was happening. And I mean, bless her heart. And so so when you talk about your failures and you talk about having to show that grit, it's very visceral, you know, for me, because I know that experience. I can relate. We grew up together. As now in your current self, you have this platform and you are reaching the community, your partners, your donors. As you look at 2025, outside of your organizational goal, what are some personal goals that you have that you're trying to really cement yourself into? I think I know, but I'd love for you to maybe share one or two with our audience that is more about your true north in terms of you wanting to really solidify yourself in this form, in this stage in your life.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I started last year that I'm taking a lot more of an interest in this year is really just around protecting my health, right? And I went on a immense journey last year to get back in shape, working out every single day, running, lifting weights, and so forth. And well, you know, the reason being is that I'm just recognizing that a lot of people in my family are going way too soon.
Yeah.
For health reasons and so forth. And as you know, both of my parents passed away in their 50s when we were in our 20s. And so I just want to be there for my daughter when she graduates from high school and goes to college and gets married or whatever that she decides to do. And so a lot of my goals are really trying to get to a space in which I feel great from a health standpoint. And I think about that in a number of different ways, brother. I'm talking mostly about the physical, but I also extend that to the mental because obviously the mind is part of the body.
Yeah.
And it's a reinforcing thing when your mind is strong and your body is strong. They both support each other, and then also the spiritual as well, right? And so for me, a lot of my individual goals are really going to be associated with really improvements from a physical, mental, and a spiritual standpoint, and making incremental steps into living into being my best self. And it's separate from the work goals, but it also isn't separate from the work goals, because what I find is that uh, prepping my body, my mind, and my spirit in those ways prepares me to take on the challenges of the day and really adapt to the different things that come up. And there's a ton of things that come up. Oftentimes, what I reflect on is like, wow, can't believe that I had to deal with this, and this. And all of those things are happening within hours of one another within the course of a workday, right? And so, as you know, life is going to life no matter what, right? And so, no matter what you're dealing with at work, something's always going to happen within life. And so, being able to move from one space to the other and do so in a way that honors the people that you're going to be interacting with within those spaces is really important to me. And so ensuring that I'm prepared to give people my full attention, my full time at home, in community, with family, with friends, is really incrementally becoming more important to me day by day.
I think that's great. I think there's really a lot of takeaways for anyone in any role. You talk about full attention, you talk about being present, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges that humans have in this day and age with distractions, technology, mental health, and everything like that. In terms of, before I ask this next question, I always like to go back to the guests and say, what question or what comment do you have for me? Because you've been on the hot seat for the last six,
Oh,
7
yeah.
questions. So I'll give you an opportunity to respite, take,
Oh no, I
take a
got it.
sip, whatever.
I
Okay.
got it. So I think one of the cool things about growing up when we grew up is that we grew up in an age where we had a background of a lot of different types of music that was almost like our soundtrack in sports, in school, and so on. I'm curious to know what you're listening to right now.
Okay.
That's kind of driving you as in this stage of your life as your soundtrack.
That's a great question. It's an unexpected question, I promise. I think what's in my heavy rotation right now is an artist by the name of Masego, Masego.
Yeah.
I really can vibe with his music for several reasons. I think at the stage in our lives, we're very close in age. It's centered around family, it's centered around community and the work that we're doing, but it's also centered around being able to be present.
Yeah.
And his music slows me down to a way where I can start to catch up with my thoughts, reflect my thoughts. So I would name him. I would also every day, any time of the day, jazz of many sorts. Gil Scott Heron, Miles Davis, just to name two, I can vibe with any day of the week, and I'd be remiss if I didn't throw in John Coltrane. So between those three exceptional artists and Masego, I think those are kind of in heavy rotation. I get, in a friendly manner, I get there's jokes around, oh, you're old, you're not, you're not hip with the latest stuff by my son, by friends and what have you. But yeah, every day, all day, that's that. But listen, as we sit here, and I'm sure there'll be some opinions about this next artist, but listen, I'm an 80s baby. actually 70, maybe 80, Generation X. But I mean, dropout, college dropout, like Kanye, like I mean,
It's a great album.
that's probably
Great
one of
album.
the most, like, I was listening to the greatest hits, and it just brings me back to this time. The music you can relate to, not just the words, but also the beat itself, all the different instrumentals, and it. So that album, College Dropout.
Yeah.
I would also
Great.
say any Jay-Z album. I mean from, you know, uh oh boy, I'm drawing a blank now, but any Jay-Z album that
Reasonable Doubt, maybe?
yeah,
Yeah.
Reasonable Doubt.
Yeah, that was the one.
That was the one. But Eric B and Rakim. I mean, then you can
Yeah.
kind of mix that in. So that's the answer that I would give you. Um, but there's always reflection. I mean, I was telling you this offline. I'm doing a lot more meditation. I'm trying to figure out a way to balance that into the workload, to the routine as well. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes. So as we wrap up here, and we're gonna keep this going offline, but from a standpoint of your promise to your team, the work, what are you really aiming to really move the needle on in 2025 for your organization that is non-negotiable? Like, in your mind, there's a lot of spinning plates, right? There's a lot of spinning plates that you have to deal with. So this is my second to last question, but what are you really in your mind? You're like, we have to move the needle here. Maybe it's the digital transformation. Maybe it's really defining what the justice aspect looks
Yeah.
like, or maybe it's something else that you haven't shared. But what's a non-negotiable for you?
So you mentioned it. It is the really defining, not even defining what justice means to us, but what is our responsibility and positionality within the justice frame, right? And so, what is the role that we can uniquely play in support of our community in partnership with all of the other institutions, all of the other stakeholders who have a vested interest in the success of Alameda County? I'm always going to say we can't do this work alone. We have to do this work in partnership. We can't own any food insecurity as a food bank. We as a community have to own any food insecurity as a community. And so when it comes to really thinking about how we move as a community to a justice stance in Alameda County, we need to really reflect and understand what does that mean for us, and how do we support our community as we go towards our best and brightest self down the line. And a lot of that's going to be listening, understanding what is happening within that landscape, understanding who is doing it, and building really strong relationships. Our work is super relationship driven, and we want to be the best partner in our community to really get us a space in where we are hitting the mutual goals of Alameda County and the people of Alameda County in this work. And so that's, to me, that is the non-negotiable. Really identifying where is our place within this landscape, and really walking alongside our community to really drive change in our space.
Segue into that, finding your role, your niche, your organizational niche. I think that's incredibly important. How has the election, how has the natural disasters, and how's just doing this great work in the state of California, those three nuances, of those three, which one of those three keeps you up at night as the leader of your organization?
I would say that it's definitely the natural disasters, right? And so when I'm looking at what's happening in LA, when I'm seeing the impacts of the hurricanes that are happening in the southeast, it's never a question of if, it's always a question of when there is a natural disaster in our region. And how are we set up to best respond to that is always going to be the question for me. I think when it comes to the political environment, both from the local to the state to the national, I feel like we're going to adapt to whatever comes in front of us. In fact, I feel like since we've gone through different administrations for the last 12 years, essentially, we understand what is necessary to ensure that our community understands what it means to access services, where to access services, what could be some of the pitfalls within the space that we're going to have to adapt to as far as procurement of products and so forth, how those things could potentially change with different administrations. And so it's a space where we definitely we're thinking a lot about, but it's not new to us. And so we haven't had a serious natural disaster in a while. And if and when that occurs, we have to be there for our community. And so for me, that's the thing that definitely keeps me up at night. And we're already prepping for that, right? We're doing things to retrofit our facility in case an earthquake occurs. We're taking, for me, I'm always taking lessons from other institutions and how they're responding to things within their community, and really trying to think about in our emergency management, how are we going to respond differently than what we've done in other disasters. And I should go back a little bit because, of course, we did have to deal with a major disaster pretty recently, which was the pandemic. And there's a lot of lessons learned even from that environment, right? And so for me, that is the thing that I think a lot about. To be honest, I think about every single thing that you asked a lot. But definitely the natural disasters is the one in which really sticks out.
Absolutely. Yeah, for obvious reasons. I mean, it's still a lingering effect, and now it's a part of our society. As it's a normalization,
Yeah.
right? An extension. We encourage you to follow Regi, his work, his organizational work. So at the end of our podcast, as we conclude, you'll see links. You'll see how to connect with Alameda County Community Food Bank, Regi, and there'll be information, links, and different sources for you to connect directly with his organization. And having said that, I really appreciate you giving me this platform, giving me your time, your attention, as you like to say. And just, it's always great. Again, offline chatter, but we talked about how we can go a year, 6 months, 3 months without seeing each other, but it's like we saw each other last week.
Yeah.
And I'll leave that here because I think that's really the genesis of how our relationship started and how we continue to manage to keep it going. And there's a lot of nuggets that we talked about, but I think from my side, as I strive to be a better human, but also to give you guys this content, is to really understand that you have to make that time. You have to be intentional. You have to be given the folks that are in your life the attention that they deserve. And I really appreciate your love, and thank you for listening. Thank you for listening, everyone, and check us out during our next podcast. Clean Plate Labs, Maceo Wright, Regi Young. Until next time.